This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, welcome to our day one training session of learning Oracle Goldengate Microservices Architecture training. My name is Ashish Agarwal, and I'll be delivering this lecture to you. So before commencing the session, just a quick round of update regarding my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/AshishAgarwal_GG. So if you haven't visited the channel, I would request you to do visit the channel and do like, share and subscribe the channel. The channel is dedicated to Goldengate related videos. So let us start the session now. So this is microservices architecture training. So the agenda of this training include overview and introduction to Goldengate Microservices, download and installation of Goldengate Microservices. We'll discuss about configuration, how to configure, what are different components involved in Goldengate Microservices architecture, how it is different from classic architecture. So we'll be discussing about how to set up replication in Goldengate Microservices architecture, what are parameter files and how you connect to those. We'll discuss about that as well. Then we'll discuss about performance matrix server, different components as I mentioned, like service manager, admin server, distribution server, receiver server, admin client. We'll discuss the installation of microservices architecture. We'll discuss what happens when source is classic, target is microservices, or vice versa. When source is microservices, target is classic. So how it works, we'll discuss all about that in our training. Also, I will include the installation as well in Goldengate. Okay. So the day one agenda includes overview and introduction to Oracle Goldengate architecture. We'll discuss today about different Oracle Goldengate architectures, and then we'll move to download of Oracle Goldengate microservices. If time permits, we'll discuss about installation. Otherwise, we'll see how it goes. So first of all, let us discuss about Oracle database architecture. Now, Goldengate is a product. Goldengate is a CDC tool. CDC stands for Change Data Capture. So change data capture means whatever changes are happening on source, those changes will be captured by the extract process and they will be applied on the target database. They will be applied on the target database using Oracle Goldengate. So Oracle database architecture is divided into two parts, SGA and Oracle database files. SGA again is divided into two parts, memory components and background processes. So memory components include your library cache, data dictionary cache, database buffer cache, Java pool, redo log buffer, large pool, etc. So these are the few memory components you have. Along with that, you have a lot of others. Then you have background processes such as pmon, smon, database writer, log writer, checkpoint, and there are a lot of others background processes as well. Then Oracle database, you have files such as data files, control files, and redo log files. So data files are the files which contains the actual data for you. Data files are the files where the actual data is stored. So when on your SQL developer or when on SQL prompt, you do select star from a table, select star from department, or select star from employee. Where what you see on your screen, where does that data get stored into? That data gets stored into the data files of the database. So you get all that data from the data files of the database. Control files are the metadata information. So the control files store the is data about data. So it stores the metadata information. Now control files are the critical files of the database. Now redo log file is used for the redo purpose. So say for example, whatever changes are happening in your database, those changes are recorded into redo log files. So any insert, update, delete, or any DDL transaction like alter, modify, all those things are stored under redo log. So redo log file is used for disaster, like when your database is when your database is abruptly shut down, or there is some recovery needed. From where does it do that recovery? It does that recovery from the redo log file. So redo log file contains all the changes being made to the database. So whenever you insert any record, update any record, delete any record, that is DML transaction, which requires exclusive commit. Those are recorded into redo log files. Along with that, any DDL transaction, alter, modify, drop, rename, or any other DDL transaction truncate log is also logged into redo log files. Now remember one thing here, redo log files gets backed up onto the system, and backup of these redo log files is called as archive log files. So archive logs are the files which are stored on the operating system. So redo log files have limited size. Now once your redo log files get full, the data into these redo log file get flushed out. And once those get flushed out, the backup of these redo log files is taken on disk, and the backup is called as archive log files. So archive log files are nothing but backup of redo log files which contains the changes being made to the Oracle database. So these redo log files and archive log files are the files which contains the changes being made to the database. Remember, I again repeat, they contain committed as well as uncommitted transactions. So it's not like they would contain only committed transactions. They would contain committed as well as uncommitted transactions. Okay, so these are the files where the actual data resides. So data files are the files where the actual data resides. Control files are the files which has the metadata information. Redo log file contains the changes being made to the database. And when the backup of these redo log files is taken on disk, it is called as archive log files. So for Goldengate purpose, these redo log files are the files, or archive log files are the files which Goldengate uses for extraction purpose. So these redo log files or archive log files are called as transaction logs of the database. These redo log files and archive log files are called as transaction logs. So Goldengate is a product which not only works with Oracle databases, it also works with non-Oracle databases. Okay, so say for example you want to work with SQL Server, or you want to set up Goldengate with MySQL. So the redo log files, so they don't have redo log files or archive log files, they have transaction logs. So what it helps in is, it helps in fetching up the data from the transaction logs. So redo log files or archive log files are the transaction logs of Oracle database. So now how it works is, how this Oracle database architecture works is, just to give you the quick overview. Now we'll just do the overview of this Oracle database architecture. So say for example, you update any record. There is a table called as employee. You update any record. So whenever you update that record, so that record will go into database buffer cache. So say for example, you did update employee, set salary equal to 10,000, where employee number equal to 12345. So what will happen when you update a record? That record becomes a dirty buffer and it gets written over here. So a copy of that change, that the buffer which has got dirty, so basically the dirty buffer will be returned into the redo log buffer. The dirty buffer will be returned into redo log buffer. And using these background process, the data will be returned into the data files and redo log files. So DBWR stands for database writer. So database writer process helps in writing the data from database buffer cache to data files. So the buffer gets dirty over here, and then using database writer process, the data gets actually reflected in data files. Now, how does redo log files get the data, and from where they get the data from? So these redo log file gets the data from the redo log buffer. Now, whatever data is present in redo log buffer, how the data gets written into redo log file is using the log writer process. Using this log writer process, the data from redo log buffer gets returned to redo log file. Now, why do we need redo log file? So redo log file is used for any change data capture tool. Along with that, it is used for redo purpose. Say for example, you did some commit into the database. You did some, you inserted some 100 records. Now before those 100 records could be written from database buffer cache to data file, your database got shut down abruptly. Now when you restart the database, you have to recover those old logs, right? How do you recover those logs? Using this redo log file. So those 100 records upon reinstantiation of the database, how will they be recovered is they will be recovered using redo log files. So redo log files are the files which are used for redoing purpose. They are used for redo of data. Okay, so for Goldengate, these redo log files, so basically from where Goldengate receives the changes or fetches the data from is from these transaction logs of the database. So either from redo log file or archive log file. So it receives the changes from redo log file or archive log file. Okay. So upon completion of overview of database architecture, I want to discuss about different types of Oracle Goldengate architecture. So there are two types of Oracle Goldengate architecture. One is classic architecture, second is microservices architecture. So this training which we are doing is microservices. So classic architecture is the one which is available since beginning of Goldengate. So just to give you a quick overview, Goldengate was founded in 1995 and it is named after famous San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. Now from 1995 it was Goldengate. In 2009 Oracle overtook it and since then it is known as Oracle Goldengate. From 2009 to 2017 there was only one way to configure Goldengate and that was through command prompt. So at that time it was only called as Oracle Goldengate. Now in 2017 Oracle launched a new type of architecture of Goldengate which is called as microservices architecture, which allows you to set up, manage, troubleshoot, configure Goldengate through GUI and allows for better integration with cloud applications. So the existing architecture was renamed to Classic. Classic means traditional. So that is GGSCI based architecture. So classic architecture is command prompt based architecture and it is GGSCI based architecture. And classic architecture is available for both Oracle as well as non-Oracle database. Microservices architecture was introduced in August 2017 from Goldengate version 12.3 onwards. So from Goldengate version 12.3 onwards and until 21C, you have both classic architecture available as well as microservices architecture available. Okay, now until 19C, now this point you have to note. Until 19C, Oracle Goldengate Microservices architecture was available only for Oracle database. So this microservices architecture is only available for Oracle database until 19C. From 19C onwards, this microservices architecture, like from 21C, Goldengate, microservices architecture support has been introduced for 4 non-Oracle databases: SQL Server, MySQL, DB2 and Informix database. So these are the 4 databases which are supported by microservices architecture. Now Oracle is pushing its customers to use this microservices architecture like anything. Still, if you go out into the market, yes, the percentage of clients using classic architecture is more, but microservices architecture is future of Oracle Goldengate. Okay, then there is one more product in Oracle Goldengate family is Oracle Goldengate Veridata. Oracle Goldengate Veridata. So, how many of you have heard about Veridata? Has anyone heard about Veridata? Okay.
Yes, it is more for verification of Goldengate.
Exactly. Perfect answer. So, Veridata is a product, as the name suggests, it verifies the data for you. Veridata verifies the data for you, right? So, say for example, on source you have 10,000 records, on target you have 9,000 records. So, what Veridata can do for you is it can identify the discrepant records and it can repair those discrepancies for you. It can repair those discrepancies for you. Okay. And if you want to repair them, it can repair those discrepancies for you. So Veridata is getting very popular nowadays due to this cloud migration. In cloud migration, people are using Veridata a lot. Because upon migration, they want to confirm whether their data is in sync or not. So that's why they are using Veridata a lot now. Okay. Now, one question which is regularly being asked from me is, with the introduction of microservices, integrated is no longer being used. What do you think? This question I have faced a lot, and still I am facing this question. So again, I repeat the question: with the introduction of microservices, integrated is no longer being used.
It is being
I
used.
think they are two independent things, Ashish, because microservices architecture is more the interface, and the capture process is integrated with the database.
So what is integrated then?
Integrated is because it's using the is using the mining of mining server for capture process, or the mining concept where
Data mining.
it's using the basically archive logs to capture
You
capture
can,
to
your
capture
answer
the
is correct. Your answer is correct. Just I need one word answer. Means what you are saying is absolutely correct. But I need one word answer. What is integrated?
Oh, what is integrated capture?
What is integrated?
I see. So
Yeah, using log miner.
It is the type of the capture.
Yeah, log miner database. From, yes, from
Exactly.
log miner database, it will get the changes in form of LCR.
Right. So Rahul, your answer is correct. So what I was looking for, I think Tushar replied absolutely correct. So integrated is type of architecture. Okay. So the thing is, why people get confused is we have two types of architecture, classic and microservices. So microservices is type of architecture of Goldengate. However, integrated is type of extract and type of Replicat in Oracle Goldengate. So what are different types of extracts and replicats available in Oracle Goldengate? So what is extract and what is replicat, first of all? So extract is a process which extracts the changes from the source database. Replicat is a process which applies the changes to the target database. So we'll be discussing about architecture, but just to give you a brief overview, extract runs on the source database, replicat process runs on the target database. So as the name suggests, extract process is the extraction mechanism of Oracle Goldengate environment. Replicat process is the apply mechanism of Oracle Goldengate environment. So what are different types of extracts available? So there are two types of extracts available: integrated extract and classic extract. Different types of replicats which are available in Oracle Goldengate is classic replicat, integrated replicat, coordinated replicat, and there is new introduction and replicat which is parallel replicat. Parallel replicate is again of two types: parallel non-integrated replicate and parallel integrated replicate. So if you go out into the market, like most implementations nowadays is integrated extract and integrated replicate, most of the configuration. So integrated extract, as Rahul mentioned, and we have already discussed many times, integrated extract is the one which receives the changes from log miner and apply it to target database in form of LCR. So it receives the changes from log miner in form of LCR and apply it to target database. Classic architecture establishes the connection directly with the database and it reads the transaction logs in sequential manner and then capture the data. So now integrated extract, for using integrated extract, your minimum Goldengate version should be 11.204. So if you are using Goldengate version prior to 11.204, you cannot use integrated extract. Similarly, your database version minimum should be 11.203 Oracle database. So integrated extract again is available for only non-Oracle database. Integrated extract is not available. Sorry, integrated extract is available only for Oracle database. It is not available for non-Oracle database. Classic extract is available since beginning. It is available for Oracle as well as non-Oracle database. Different types of replicates are non-integrated or classic replicate, integrated replicate, coordinated replicate, and parallel replicate. So integrated replicate is the one which is available since beginning. Sorry, non-integrated replicate or classic replicate is the one which is available since beginning of Oracle Goldengate. Integrated replicate is the one which was introduced in Goldengate version 12.1 and database version is 12. Coordinated replicate, it was introduced in Goldengate version 12.2. Parallel replicate has been introduced in Goldengate version 12.3. So coordinated replicate is making classic replicate run into parallel mode. Parallel replicate is the latest type of replicate and it is really a very huge performance improvement. It brings a lot of performance improvement. Why? Because there are multiple applier and mapper processes which runs in parallel replicate. So parallel replicate is of two types: parallel non-integrated replicate and parallel integrated replicate. So basically these earlier ones, non-integrated and integrated replicate, which we discussed, they are in non-parallel mode. So when you run them in parallel mode, they are called as parallel integrated or parallel non-integrated replicate. So to use the parallel non-integrated replicate, your database version should be 12.1 minimum and Goldengate version should be 12.3. For using parallel integrated replicate, the database version minimum should be 12.2 and Goldengate version should be 12.3. Okay. So any question on different types of architecture of Goldengate and different types of extracts and replicate? Anyone has any question? So we'll be discussing about how to set up replicate, how to set up extract, everything we'll be discussing in detail. But any questions so far from anyone?
Yes, Ashish, I have a question. I mean, it might be an early question, but see, if the client is setting up the Golden Gate, then how can we, if I'm setting up the Golden Gate, then how can we convince the client to use some microservices instead of classic architecture?
So microservices architecture is the future of Goldengate. The thing is, if it's a new setup, let me tell you one more thing. Okay, very good question which you have asked. From Goldengate version 21C onwards, classic architecture has been deprecated. So it's like it's not desupported, but no new feature will be introduced for classic architecture going forward. Okay, so one of the major reasons for pitching in for microservices is this classic architecture can be desupported anytime, and also the support for classic architecture can be taken away by Oracle anytime, but it's not easy. Still, if you go out into the market share of classic architecture is very high. Means in fact, most of the implementations which happens, they prefer classic architecture. I'll tell you the reason behind it is there is not much awareness about microservices architecture. Other thing is there are not many Goldengate administrators who know about microservices. So these are the reasons why Oracle does a lot of seminars, they support organization, they tell about microservices to get awareness. So the answer to your question is microservices is future of Goldengate. More you use it, you get well adapted to it. So sooner or later you will have to upgrade. So if tomorrow you have to do something, why not to start from today? So if it's at least if it's a new implementation, your recommendation would always be microservices. Now another thing is you should always take Oracle's advice on it or Oracle's recommendation. And if you're going to Oracle, they would also recommend microservices if it is supported for your Goldengate and database version. Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else has any other question before we move forward? Okay. So before I discuss about microservices architecture, let me quickly discuss about classic architecture so that, see, the purpose of this training means I'll make you understand the difference between classic and microservices as well. Because most of you I know, the Goldengate being used in your organization is classic architecture. So I can give you the better idea on difference between the two. So that will help you in understanding Goldengate Microservices architecture better. Anyways, don't worry, even if you are unable to compare, still you will be learning. So I'll make that easier for you. But just to let you know about classic architecture and how it differs from microservices architecture, I'll be doing a bit more. So let us first discuss about classic architecture, how classic architecture works. So there are two databases, one is source and second is target. Each database has its own transaction logs. So whatever changes happens to the database, those changes gets recorded into the source database transaction logs. Now once the changes are recorded into the transaction logs, those changes gets captured by the extract process. So extract process receives the change, and once it receives those changes, so say for example you did insert, update and delete. So capture process, remember, captures only committed transactions. As I told you earlier, the transaction logs of database, that is redo logs and archive logs in case of Oracle, contains committed as well as uncommitted transactions. Oracle Goldengate only capture committed transactions as they occur by reading the transactions. Once the capture process captures the changes, it writes them to the trail file on local machine, which are called as local trail. Once the data is available into local trail, data pump process reads the data out of your local trail, sends it over TCP/IP network and writes it to remote trail on target. So there are two types of trail files. One is local trail and second is remote trail. First is local trail, which resides on local machine, and second is remote trail, which resides on remote machine. So capture process captures the data, writes to local trail. Pump process sends the data over TCP/IP network and writes it to remote trail. Once the data becomes available into remote trail, the Goldengate delivery or Replicat process apply that data to the target database and your application is up and running. Now suppose your Goldengate is set up in bidirectional environment. So when Goldengate is set up in bidirectional environment, your capture, pump and delivery process will be present on both the sites. That is, they will be present on site A as well as site B. So how will it work is, from site A to site B, the capture and pump will reside on site A and apply it to target side. In bidirectional environment, what will happen is now side B will also take as will also work as source. So the extract process will capture the changes, right? So local trail on side B. The pump process on side B will send the data over TCP/IP network and writes it to remote trail on site A. Once the data becomes available into remote trail on site A, the data will be applied by Replicat process on site A to the site A database. So three processes are involved in Goldengate replication: capture, pump, and delivery process. Along with that, you have local trail and remote trail. Now remember one thing here: this pump process sends the data over TCP/IP network. How it works is pump process establishes the connection with target database. Once the connection is established, pump process establishes the connection with target server. Once the connection is established, there is a collector process which runs in the background over here. So collector process is a background process which runs on the target machine. So what does pump process do is pump process sends the data to collector process collects it and write it to remote. Okay, so this is how Goldengate classic architecture works for you. Any question on classic architecture from anyone?
Ashish, one question. Like someone asked me why we use pump, why we directly not doing or from the extract only, why we use the pump in between the when we are transferring it.
Okay, so though it is a classic architecture question, but that is good question I'll take, because even though in microservices we don't have pump, but we have the concept somewhat related to it. So I'll tell you. So pump process basically, so remember here, there are two tasks which is being done over here. First is the capture process, which captures the changes and writes to local trail. This is first part. Okay, so capture process captures the changes and writes it to local trail on the same machine where the capture process resides. Now, what is the work of pump process? Pump process sends the data over TCP/IP network upon reading local trail and writes that data to the remote trail. So what pump process is doing is, it is just sending the data over TCP/IP network. Pump process is the data messenger for you. Now, pump process is an optional component in classic architecture. It is not mandatory for you to use pump process. However, it is recommended to use Goldengate pump process in your configuration for increased configuration. So what does, in the absence of pump process now, how does capture process work? So suppose you remove pump process from your Goldengate configuration. As I mentioned, it is optional component. So what happens? So in present pump process, the tasks are divided. Capture process will only capture the transaction and pump process will write it to remote trail. Now when pump process is not there, in that case there will be no local trail. So what capture process will do is, it will have two tasks for you. First, the capture process will capture the data, and second is writing the data to remote trail. So basically earlier the capture process work was only to capture the data, but now there are two tasks being done by the capture process. First is capturing the data and second is writing the data to the remote trail. Now suppose the network between the two goes down, it will cause your capture process to go down as well. However, if you were using pump, in that case only pump would have gone down, however capture would have continued to run. Okay.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Okay, Madhu has a question. Do we need to know classic architecture to learn MSA? See, it's always better if you know, but don't worry if you, even if you don't know, like my training, as I told you, they start from basics. So even if you don't have any knowledge on classic, you will still be able to learn and in better way. But if you have knowledge of classic, then Yeah, always having knowledge of something is always better. But the answer to your question is no, it's not mandatory to know or learn classic architecture if you want to learn microservices architecture. Okay, so let us move forward. So now I'll move to micro. So this component of classic architecture includes capture, pump, delivery process. Along with that, so capture process is also called as extract process. Delivery process is also called as replicat process. So capture process captures the data, data pump process sends the data over TCP/IP network, and replicat process applies the data to the target database. Now, how does microservices architecture work, and what is Goldengate Microservices architecture? So, microservices architecture of Goldengate is a REST API based architecture which was introduced from Goldengate 12c R3. So, Oracle Goldengate Microservices architecture is a new REST API microservices based architecture which enable us to configure, monitor, and manage Oracle Goldengate services using web-based user interface. Oracle Goldengate 12c R3, that is 12c release 3, introduces the concept of microservices architecture. So Goldengate Microservices architecture was introduced from Goldengate version 12c R3. So Oracle Goldengate Microservices architecture looks like this. You have service manager. All these things will be clear to you, don't worry, once we do the setup. But just to give you a quick overview, actually the thing is that what does the term microservices means? Microservices means here is things runs as a service over here. In classic architecture, it is process oriented architecture. However, microservices architecture is service oriented architecture. So services runs in microservices architecture, and those services assist in performing the replication using Oracle Goldengate Microservices. Okay, so Oracle Goldengate Microservices contains the service manager. Under service manager, you have four types of servers: administration server, distribution server, performance metric server, and receiver server. So each server has its own functionality. Like when you configure Goldengate extract or replicate process, it is you configure it under administration server. Any start stop of the process, any purging of trail files, anything if you have to do, all those things is done under administration server. Service manager is watchdog for all the services. So under service manager, all the services should be up and running, like administration server, distribution server, performance metric server, and receiver server. Okay, so distribution server is used, as the name suggests, it is used for distributing the data from source to target. Performance metric server is the new addition to Goldengate functionality which was introduced from 12.3 Goldengate onwards. Receiver server receives the changes which are being sent by distribution server over TCP/IP network. So this is how architecture of microservices architecture looks like. So you have a source database. So under microservices architecture, you have service manager, performance metric server, distribution server, and service manager. So under admin server, you configure Goldengate extract process, which receives the changes from the transaction logs of the database. It extracts those changes and writes them to the trail file on local machine, which are called as local trail. Once the data becomes available into local trail, distribution server, under distribution server, you create a distribution path. So distribution server sends the data over TCP/IP network, where on target it is received by the receiver server, and with help of receiver server, data gets written into trail files. So Goldengate data pump process has been replaced with distribution server in microservices architecture. Similarly, the collector process of classic has been replaced with receiver server on microservices architecture. I again repeat that the classic data pump process has been replaced by distribution server in microservices architecture. Classic collector process has been replaced with receiver server on the target database. Okay. So this is how architecture of Goldengate looks like. You do admin server. Under admin server, you configure Goldengate extract process, writes the data to the trail local trail file. Once the data is available into local trail file, distribution server sends the data over TCP/IP network, writes it to remote trail, and then data gets returned into remote trail. And once the data is available into remote trail, the Replicat process applies it to target. Okay. So any question on architecture?
Uh, uh, yes, sir. What is distribution server and receiver server? Is it any server? I mean, type of any server or just a process?
It's a service. We'll see. Once we configure, you will see when you install Goldengate, these services gets created automatically.
Okay.
Okay. There is one question from Jay, but collector in classic was just a background process, but now we have receiver server. Yeah. So collector in classic architecture was a background process, but still it was there. So classic architecture collector process has been replaced with receiver server in microservices architecture. Okay. So now we'll see how to download Oracle Goldengate. How we download.
Ashish, what is metrics and this the other one will, I mean, can you please go back?
So metric server is performance metric server. We'll be discussing about performance metric server.
And what is service manager?
So service, okay, very good question. So service manager is watchdog for all these services. So service manager is a place you can consider which caters to all these services. So it basically manages, the service manager manages the services for you. What are the services? This admin server, performance metric server, distribution server, and receiver server. All these are
Like manager we have in the extra.
sorry.
Like manager we have in the extra, like manager we have in the classic architecture.
Yeah. So my manager process we have in classic, it manages all the processes of Goldengate instance. Same way here, service manager acts as the watchdog for all the services.
Okay.
Okay. So now we see how we can download microservices architecture.
Before we move, one question. So if I install everything onto one server and I've created the extract and replicate on the same server, still the same services will be running in the background?
You mean in Goldengate hub architecture, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, same services would run. Everything would be same.
Okay.
So the components of Goldengate remain same irrespective you are running them in hub architecture or standalone anywhere. It remains same.
Okay.
Okay. So let us see how we can download this microservices architecture, or how do we download Goldengate. So downloading of Goldengate is always same, whether you're using classic or microservices. But prior to moving for download of Goldengate, you have to note down few stuff. What you have to note down is what is source database, version and platform, target database, version and platform. So you have to note this down. So in our case, and source database type means whether it is Oracle, DB2 or any other database. So these virtual boxes are shared with you as well. So these virtual boxes, we have Oracle database type as Oracle, version is 12.2, and platform is Linux x86 64 on both source as well as target. Okay, now once you've identified your source and target, what other thing you have to do is mount point where you are going to install Goldengate. Where to install Goldengate, which mount point, how would you do that, and using which user. So we'll discuss that when we discuss about installation of Goldengate. So first thing is, how do we download Oracle Goldengate? That's a question. So you need to first of all check the certification metrics to confirm what version of Goldengate would be supported for this 12.2 database and this platform, whatever you are using. So you can do Fusion middleware certification metrics, Oracle Fusion middleware certification metrics. So in Google you can type Oracle Goldengate is a Fusion middleware product. So you can do Fusion middleware certification metrics. So here when you go in this, you can find certification metrics for 21C, 19C. So 21C is also out. We are going to do this training on 19C. So you can search 19C certification, Goldengate 19C certification. If you are unable to find any product anywhere, you can either download it from OTN or you can download it from edelivery.oracle.com. So search for Goldengate. Here, click on Goldengate. Now here, your database will, your processor type is Linux x86 64. So our database is Oracle only. So 19C supports this database. So we can, oh no, we have to select the database name as Oracle. Okay. So 19C Oracle database supports this Linux platform, x86 platform it supports. Okay. It supports Oracle database and these are the databases it supports. So ours is 12.2, so it supports 12.2 Goldengate without any issues. So now what we'll do, we'll download Goldengate binaries. So prior to moving to download, you need to check the certification metrics. And always remember, download Oracle Goldengate 19C. So always remember you check the certification metric for any product prior to moving to download. So the binaries on OTN right now are available for 21C. These are 19C. So if you see, the binaries are available right now here. So they are database wise and they are platform wise as well. So this binary, do you see two types of binaries are there? One says Oracle Goldengate 19.1.0.4 for Oracle and another one says for microservices. So the one which don't say anything, only Oracle Goldengate, that is classic architecture binary. And the one which microservices is microservices related binary. So search for your platform supported version Linux 64. Once you get that, download it. Okay, you can review the and accept the, this is okay, this is not Linux x86 64, this is Oracle on IBM, this is different. So if you are unable to find your binary over here, you can find your binary at edelivery.oracle.com. You can sign in. So type in your account sign in details. sign in. Okay, now you can search for Oracle Goldengate. So here you can search for, say for example 19C, you click on it. So it will be added to your cart. Come here, view items, click on view items. So e-delivery works in this way. Continue. Oracle Solaris. So this is Linux, but this one is, click on continue. No, this one is classic architecture. We have to search for microservices, right? Microservices. It should come here only. Sorry. If I select Linux x86-64, continue. I reviewed, click on continue. Now here you get. So once you click on continue, do you see you get all the things over here? So the one which we have to download is this one, Oracle Goldengate 19.1.0.0.4 microservices for Oracle on Linux x86. So you need to download this. Once you do that, click on download. The download will start. Okay. Once downloaded, you can transfer it to your server wherever you want to. So in our case, we are going to use these virtual boxes. So, and in these virtual boxes, the binaries are already downloaded and binaries are already kept under /home/Oracle/softwares. Here you will find the binaries for classic architecture. These are microservices architecture binaries. They are already present over here. So what you have to do? You just, if you are using some different machine, you can download from e-delivery or OTN and transfer the binary. If you are using training provided VM, you already have the binaries present in the /home/Oracle/softwares location. Okay. So any question on this? Anyone?
Yeah, Ashish, I have one question.
Yeah, you
which kind of part of classic as well as microservice, I believe. So there are one component which is the Oracle client on the machine where you install Goldengate. So in the certification matrix, does that client version comes into picture at all or not at all?
So client version means this. So okay, so you mean hub kind of architecture, right?
Listen, in a hub architecture where there is no source or target on the same machine, so there is Oracle client required.
So you can use the same. So you need to have same kind of client like what mentioned over here.
Okay, so the client version should match with the kind of certification matrix.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're if you're using Goldengate in hub architecture, so client version you have to see. So if your client version, according to client version, you have to download.
I see. So the client version must be from this tab where this is database version.
Exactly. Now in that case, your database version can be 11.2.03. Your client is 12C. So you will have to check the certification matrix based on client version.
I see. So suppose let's say if you see in the tab 104 row and my source database is 11.204 And on hub architecture, my Oracle client could be anywhere between from 11.204 to 18C.
Right, correct.
I see. And one more thing, in the parameter file of the capture, there is a parameter called set environment and Oracle home. So what does this Oracle home means? Is it the client version of the hub architectures?
Location, yeah, exactly.
I see. So that Oracle, so I can change that basically. If I install Goldengate, I can use any client version by setting the set environment in the parameter file.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So any other question from anyone? So guys, we'll be discussing about installation of Oracle Goldengate in the next session. So far we have discussed about download of Oracle Goldengate. So if I quickly have to recap today's session, what we have discussed is, in today's session we started with the Oracle database architecture. Then we discussed about different types of architectures available in Goldengate. One is classic architecture and second is microservices. Then we also discussed about what is Veridata. Then we discussed briefly about classic architecture and how data flow in classic architecture. We then got introduced to Oracle Goldengate Microservices Architecture. So microservices architecture is available from 2017 and it's a REST API based architecture. Different components of Oracle Goldengate Microservices architectures are service managers, administration server, distribution server, receiver server, performance metric server. Now you will see them when we download. You will see exactly what each one of them means. I know you may have few queries, but in the next session, these queries should be answered for you. Data pump process of classic architecture has been replaced with distribution server in microservices architecture. Collector process of classic architecture has been replaced with receiver server in microservices architecture. Download of microservices architecture binaries can be done through OTN, or you can use adelivery.oracle.com. Okay, so in the next session, so what I want you to do now is, I want you to set up this architecture what we have done, and I want you to set up the lab, because from the next session onwards we'll have a lot of practicals which we'll be doing. So what I want you to do is, tomorrow take your time and set up the lab. So for the training, you already have received few emails like lab setup kit. You must have received the email from my ID. It's automated email and the subject of the email is lab setup kit for practice. So in that, download the lab and practice the lab. Then you will also receive, you must have received the enrollment confirmation email. So verify you are enrolled to the correct courses as well. So verify those, and from the lab setup kit email, follow the lab setup kit email. If you have already not set up the lab, set up these virtual boxes for practice. Okay, so the day 2 of training I will be conducting day after tomorrow. I am giving you, so the steps prior to next session is, you have to set up the lab and you have to download Oracle Goldengate Microservices Architecture. You have, so the binaries are already present in virtual boxes. So you need to download the binaries. Means you don't need to download, but you need to see how to download. So check the certification metrics and so in the next session, we'll be discussing about installation of Oracle Goldengate Microservices, how to create service manager in Oracle Goldengate Microservices, how to create deployment, log into service manager, different services which are part of service manager, create credential store, and directory structure difference between classic and microservices. We'll do in next session. So the next session is day after tomorrow. So as per EST timing, it's on Thursday, 7th April. Timing is same, 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. EST, and as per IST it's on Friday, 8th April 2022, and timing is same, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. IST. Link to join this session will be different. It's not this one, it will be different. I'll share the link 24 to 48 hours prior to that.
So Ashish, tomorrow we don't have any session.
Tomorrow, basically, we don't have session, but I'm giving you time to set up the lab. Because why? Because the sessions are practical going forward, and I want you to give time to. Yeah, tomorrow we don't have live session, but yes, we need to consider we have a session and spend that time in setting up the lab.
Okay. And do we get this recording? I mean,
Yeah, you will get that. I'll discuss about that.
okay.
So, any question related to today's session, anyone?
Yes, Ashish, I have a question. How much memory and RAM is needed? I mean, to install the microservice. For two databases.
So, Goldengate Microservices space consideration, I'll take up that question while installation in the next session. Now, RAM wise, it is good to have minimum 4 CPUs.
Okay.
Goldengate can work on 2 CPUs as well, but if you are asking for anything, any recommendation from me, I always go with 4 CPUs.
Okay, and is it also recommended to, install the OEM, grid plugins, for this?
No, that's okay. It's not mandatory.
Okay.
Okay. So
Last question. Will you be covering any hub related
I'll
topics?
be discussing about that, Puneet. You'll be getting answer to those as well.
Thank you.
Okay. So I hope guys today's session was informative and useful. You were able to follow.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ashish sir,